Diana, would you mind? Is that okay? No, I get your name today. No, Diana, you want to sit right here in the end? Would that be all right? Why? We give you more room. We give you more room. Yeah.
A couple work.
Yes. 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 Okay, thank you. Right here, John.
Well, we usually have some place in, looks like everybody's showing up in person today. Yeah, yeah, we did.
Everybody got that.
Okay, that side?
Tracy, over there.
Get in while we can, it's good. Okay.
Are you gonna go down? That's right. I appreciate it. We're nothing without you. Yeah.
I'm a former stoker on Bob Warren's bus.
I know.
I would have. I'll give you a run. Me too.
Anybody else need a budget pack this time?
Nice to meet you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now, Pharaohs.
What's that?
Just want Egypt. Now, the
I'm
Pharaohs.
calling the meeting to order of the Sunset Empire Transportation District Budget Committee. We'll do, we're a little late, so I'm calling it at 10:04. And we will do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mary, would you do a roll call for us when you're done with the furniture?
Peter Montero,
Here.
Mark Powers. John Lansing.
Here.
Christine Malich. Here. Marianne Brandon. Here. Linda Ward.
There she is.
Okay, and is Nicole Hutke?
Here.
Okay, is Clark Powers up there? Let's see Clark Powers, okay, then Guillermo,
There's a,
Rebecca Reed? Here. Debbie Boo Schmidt? Here. Diana Nino? Here. Pamela Legria? Here. Tracy McDonald?
here,
And Charles Withers?
Present.
Okay,
Thank you. At this time, we'll do the election of the Budget Committee Chair. Take nominations for the Budget Committee Chair.
Nominate Tita Montero.
second,
Is there any other nominations? Okay. We will close nominations and Tita, you are our chair. Okay.
haven't done this for a few years, so I kind of forgot. So, election of budget committee secretary. Make nominations.
Pamela Aguirre. Allegrio, thank you.
You're welcome.
Second.
Any other nominations? Close nominations. Okay. Pamela, you're the secretary.
Do I have to take notes?
No.
No, Mary does that. You get to review it.
Yes, you
and-
do. They're changing it this year.
Okay, so we start off with approval of the minutes from the meeting of May 19th, 2022.
And I would so move that we adopt those minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay. From a motion by Tracy McDonald and second by Debbie Lee Schmidt to approve the minutes. Any discussion or questions?
I have, something didn't sound quite right to me under number
Okay.
7, but on the second page at the bottom, the capital reserve fund will be used to purchase needed equipment. And I don't think 2 needs to be in there.
I think it's probably the 4 that doesn't need.
Well, one of the 2 words.
Yes, you're right.
It's little, but
Oh my God, I think I'm sorry.
it's on section 7, but on the second page. So page 33.
33.
It's at the top, it's halfway down. The capital reserve fund will be used to purchase needed equipment. So it's probably will be used for purchase needed equipment. Just an extra word. That means I read it.
Any other questions? Okay, so that's an amendment to the minutes. Let's go back to that motion. Motion to accept the amended minutes. Tracy,
Yes, I stipulate that.
okay, and the second,
I will second that.
okay. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Goes from there. You know, do you have just an agenda? Because I'm going through, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so budget officer presentation of the budget message and budget.
Good morning, all. Thank you for coming. I'm Paul Lewicki, even though I don't have a name tag yet. I'm glad to be here, and I never thought I would be here. And I want to start off by recognizing Mary and Kelly and Jason Jones over in the corner for the hours that they've put in a very short time, putting together what we have for you today in the absence of our former executive director. This will probably be a slightly different format than we're all used to. There was no preparatory work done on the budget prior to about 2 weeks ago. We recognize that this budget may be a little thin and there may be areas that need to be fine-tuned. But as I said in my message, we're a little uncertain of when and how much funding is coming. I did write a message. If you've all read it, that's fine. If you want me to read it for the record, I will.
Why don't you read it for the record?
Your budget committee members, although the district enjoyed encouraging performance numbers during the first 3 quarters of fiscal year 23, on April 29th, we were forced to suspend service due to a lack of cash. The leadership team and the board were unaware of this grave financial crisis until a special board meeting held on April 18th. It was during that board meeting that the executive director made the recommendation to suspend service beginning the following day, April 19th. That recommendation was not adopted by the board, which favored a greater effort be made by staff to secure financing to carry the district through the end of the fiscal year and into the next fiscal year. At that time, when it became apparent that funds had been exhausted, ODOT suspended reimbursements and other payments to SETD pending an audit. These funds included the 5311 monies amounting to $153,000 and other reimbursements for a total of $259,000. On May 3rd, Executive Director Jeff Hazen resigned his position. On May 5th, the board installed Paul Lewicki as the interim executive director to serve until the board can identify and hire a new executive director. With support from ODOT, the Public Transportation Division, and Oregon Transportation Infrastructure Bank, a loan in the amount of $505,000 was proposed to and accepted by the board. The loan came with the possibility of a second $500,000 loan in June based on our service plan going forward and our use of the funds from the initial loan. It also came with conditions of specific reporting requirements such as a core business plan through June of 23, copies of bi-weekly statements from every bank and local government investment account, copies of monthly income statements, balance sheets, statement of cash flow, copy of the year-to-date general ledger, detail report, copies of monthly accounts receivable.
Aging.
I'm sorry, that should be aging, and accounts payable, a narrative report of the month's service levels and routes, and a plan for service level and route plans for upcoming month routes. Early on, an expectation of ODOT was communicated to the district that paratransit services must be restarted by May 8th. This was accomplished and included the recall of 2 furloughed drivers and the paratransit supervisor, who also functions as the dispatcher for paratransit service. Further, weekday fixed route service was restarted on May 15th. This service provides modified Route 101 service Monday through Friday from 5:50 a.m. until 8 p.m. This service includes 2 loops on each of 2 shifts, which includes service to Emerald Heights on each loop and Cannon Beach on the, I'm sorry, it says 2nd and 3rd loop. That should be the 1st and 4th loops. This provides service to those who live in North County and work in South County or vice versa. On May 20th, we restarted the Pacific Connector for service between Astoria Transit Center and Cannon Beach. This service includes 5 loops and provides service from 8:10 in the morning till 9:07 p.m. This schedule is designed to best interface with the connector service from Tillamook County Transportation District, which terminates in Cannon Beach. These restarted services required recalling 2 more furloughed fixed route drivers to cover the AM and PM shifts on the weekend, as well as covering 1 shift each during the weekday service. It is expected that we will bring back the next driver in seniority who is able to drive paratransit as well as fixed routes, and will provide a flexible resource to cover short vacancies as soon as funding is identified and available. It is this service that staff expects to use for budgetary purposes for the entire fiscal year 24, as financial resource levels for the year at this point are not certain. Our 5310, 5311, and STIF grants are being rewritten to better support the district's recovery through the upcoming biennium. It is by design and with the support of ODOT Public Transportation Division that we submit this budget, recognizing that it is based on uncertain funding numbers, and that following a forensic audit by ODOT and dependent upon its findings, funding availability will be identified and quantified. This is expected to permit the development and submittal of a supplemental budget reflecting potential additional services for the remainder of fiscal year 24. To sum that up, as I've already mentioned once, we don't have any certain funding dates available to us at this point. It's primarily based on how well we do with the first loan that we received. Our next funding would be the second loan if the state decides to offer that loan to us. As far as reimbursement for outstanding reimbursement requests, For the current fiscal year, we have been notified that there will be no funds forthcoming from the state until the audit is complete. Frankly, that audit could take a month or two. As far as funding for the fiscal year that we're here to talk about today, there have been statements made of certain funding coming early in July, but I don't have anything in writing on the exact date or the exact amount. So the strategy going forward is that we have stood up minimum service at this point. We are servicing the entire county from one end to the other. We are servicing weekdays and weekends. We are servicing paratransit people who desperately need to have what we have to offer. But the plan going forward is to maintain that level of service until such time as we get a commitment for greater funds that we can count on. And then we will add what service we can afford going forward. The worst thing we could do is to start to add service and then fall down again. So we're going to be cautious. Again, ODOT has reminded me that without a budget on June 30th, without an approved budget on June 30th, we will close our doors because we have no authority to spend any money after that. So our objective here is to reach an agreeable budget with the understanding that we will do a supplemental. I'm guessing it would be probably in the August, September timeframe. Once we know what money is available, what services we're going to restore, then we can tweak the numbers to be something that we can work to. If anybody has a better strategy than that, I'm open to it, but that's the way we're going. Any questions, comments?
I have several questions. Typically, a supplemental budget is done at the board level. Is the intent that the supplemental budget for 24 be done at the board level or a reconvening of the budget committee?
At this point, I would say that it would be done at the board level. The spirit of your question, I have already anticipated. The work that's done in this committee is important and necessary. I wouldn't want to exclude those of you who have volunteered to undertake this responsibility from that effort. How that inclusion would look, I'm not sure. I don't foresee reconvening the budget committee at that point. I certainly foresee keeping the budget committee in the loop and encouraging input and feedback.
My other question is about the current budget year. You've received the amount of $505,000 as a loan from ODOT. Was a supplemental budget passed to accept that loan?
It was not. Again, your point is well taken. We've been in this situation for about 2.5 weeks. Much of that time has been spent standing up the services that we've recalled, recalling the employees necessary to staff those, spending time with the attorneys talking about the differences between layoffs and terminations for a furlough, so that we make sure our employees' rights are protected. And some of the other points may not have been addressed yet.
I would suggest that the board see to that and because you're already spending funds out of that $505,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we are.
And you really do need a supplemental budget to allow you to spend those funds. And connected to that, how do you anticipate that the district will repay those loans?
The first loan, the board decided to go with a 4-year repayment plan. I believe that correct me if I'm wrong, Kelly, comes in at about $38,000 a quarter for the next 4 years. With our reduced service level, I don't foresee a problem with the repayment. I would anticipate that if we take a second loan for the same amount, if the interest is the same, I would imagine the amortization will be the same.
What's the interest rate? 3%. And then, as far as employees being furloughed, terminated, et cetera, and from the current budget, is the district all caught up on paying out the obligations for the payroll deductions from the employees?
Kelly has seen to everything being paid that's owed those employees.
I don't mean owed to the employees, I mean owed on behalf of the employees to the benefits, life insurance, any kind of other kinds of insurance they have, and their benefits.
Yep.
We have paid all, but there's a portion of the medical benefits that we will finish paying in June. And then they'll be completely caught up, and that will be their benefits through May 1st, all of their benefits.
So,
But they're valid, so like their retirement funds have been paid, Aflac has been paid, anything like that, deductions like that have all been paid. And then their insurance will have the rest of this month's, and then it'll all be caught up for everybody.
and then they'll go on to, they won't have insurance, they'll go on to Cobra, thank you.
I believe that's what HR is doing, yes. I might, at this point, in the interest of transparency, mention that for those employees that separate from the district, we will be liable for their accrued vacation time.
Yes, that was gonna be my next question.
And at this time, the maximum exposure that gives the district is about $62,000.
Okay,
I don't know that that's included in the spreadsheets.
It's not.
I didn't see it. All right, anybody else have any questions? John?
As a member of the budget committee, a question and the answer in 25 words or less, but how do we find ourselves in this position? And if that's an improper question at this time, I'll retract it.
You know, I think it's the question that everybody would like to ask and would like to have the answer to. I think many of us have our own ideas, but I have to say, I think it would be unfair to say this is what happened, not having any evidence. I'm sorry, Pam.
Go ahead, I would like to say something.
Okay. When they complete this forensic audit, we will get a report. It will give us the facts. It will be public record, if I'm not mistaken. And we will all know what the findings are, and we can draw our own conclusions. But I really can't tell you at this point.
Right now, it's just scramble time.
It is. We want to stay alive. We want to continue to provide the service we can to our riders. We want to call back as many employees as we can afford to do it. And we want to demonstrate an enhanced transparency going forward for the board, for the budget committee, for ODOT, for our riders, so that we don't end up in a situation down the road where something happens that nobody had any foresight of.
Joan, just so you know, on the 14th of April, when I talked to Jeff, the first time I had heard anything, he told me he had miscalculated some of the STIP funds. He also told one other employee that, but he never came out in public and said that.
So,
Sorry, Madam Chair.
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Thank you,
see that.
Chair.
Thank you, Charles.
I think we refrain from guessing and trying to assume, especially within the public spectrum, trying to assume what happened. I think we're prudent that we wait until we get the forensic audit. We want to know specifically. But guessing and who did what, or whatever, I think is country.
Good point.
I believe, Pamela, you're next.
One, I just wanted to mention, I know you can't put on new other routes, but there have been worries at the college that they can't get to the college, and there's no service in Cloutzenine. The second thing is, on page 35, there's supposed to be a core business plan through June 30th, 2023. Well, now I don't even know the date. So what is the status of that?
I drafted that plan yesterday. I forwarded it to our regional transportation coordinator, who is Arla Miller. She has forwarded it to her colleagues at ODOT to review and get any input. And we will take that input and refine the draft. And Kelly has developed a spreadsheet to support that plan. And we will end up, I have told them by the end of business Friday that ODOT will have that plan in hand.
And will that remain public?
That's a good question. At this point, I don't have, since it's a draft and since it's the terms of that loan and it's, everything right now is so fluid, I would hate to put out something that locked us into a position that we wouldn't be able to continue to be flexible in. If it's a legal requirement that it's public, of course, we'll do that. But at this point, it really is tantamount to negotiations between us and ODOT on a transaction that we're trying to finalize.
I guess I would think that once it's accepted by ODOT, it does become a public document because it's for transparency.
May well be. We certainly don't want to hide it. I don't want to alarm anybody out there by releasing documents, and I don't want to give any false hope either. So whatever we're required to do by law, we'll certainly comply with.
Pamela, you have more comments?
Just one more.
Yes.
I strongly recommend that the budget committee meets when we meet the supplemental budget. Because as you've stated, these numbers are fill in the blank, but not set in stone, so that the real decisions actually will be made with the supplementary budget. And I don't think it's fair that the budget committee is not present to give comments on the supplementary budget. I think they need to be part of the process, not sitting having to ask questions as a public person.
Deanna.
Thank you. I actually wanna support what Pamela was saying about the possibility, if it's legal that we do that, I would also propose that we reconvene the budget committee. The more eyes and the more opinions and the more people looking over our budget, I think that would be better. So by the moment that we have the supplemental budget, if we could reconvene and all of our volunteer members of the committee would be willing to come back, I think that would be a very good idea. So my questions. So the first loan that we received, the $505,000, was that only enough to cover us until the end of the 2022-2023 fiscal year that ends on June 30? Or will there be any money left over for the new fiscal year?
The original loan, the $500,000 that we had received originally, will take us through about the middle of June. That's why we're looking for the additional funding to get us through to the new biennium in hopes that we'll be getting new funding then.
And then, were we like owing different things, or like if we do get that second $500,000 loan, how far would that take us? Like a month, 2 months?
The second $500,000, at this moment, I don't have an exact prediction as to how far that'll take us. It'll take us further than the first $500,000 did, because the first $500,000 we used to catch up on things that we were past due on.
Mhm.
So there was monies in that was spent for those things that wouldn't be spent in the next $500,000. Past that, our service levels are much lower now, so our payroll is lower. Our, our taxes are lower, different things like that we've slimmed down on. So we won't have those funds going out as well.
So with that first loan, were we able to also pay out the vacation, like the accrued vacation time, like all of those?
That will be paid with those funds, yes.
That's good. Okay, that's good. And then the second loan, when would we have to make the decision? Well, not us, but when will ODOT agree to propose to give us that loan? Is that in June as well, or would we have to wait until July?
We're in process with them at this point, of getting any information that they're asking for. Part of it is the business plan going forward, which Paul and I are working on getting that into them. And that there's a couple other things. So like with our current loan, we have, like Paul had mentioned, I have to send bi-weekly statements of each one of our bank accounts for them to look at. And then as service goes forward, we have some different service reporting. And so they want to make sure that we're doing our appropriate reporting, and then they want to look at our financials going forward. So I'm forecasting going forward what we look like without that funding and what we look like with that funding, so that they can have an idea as to where we'll be sitting to know when or if they're going to give us that funding.
Great. So in terms of funding, ODOT is suspending like our reimbursement, like you explained, and I think that's fair because they're looking into our financials. Which of our fundings are being suspended? Is it only the grants? Is it also taxes? Is it timber revenue? Like what is suspended?
So ODOT only suspends our grants. So we will still get our timber revenue, we will still get our taxes, we will still get our mass transit funding, and then of course our fares. And I'm sure there's something I'm missing, but of those I will still get those.
So I understand that what the previous executive director said is that we had no cash, that there was no money left. So what happens to the grants that were given to specific programs, like the mobility and transportation options? What happens to those programs that were funded specifically?
Well, again, I don't want to second guess what the audit will show, but funds were deposited with the district and funds were spent against our payables. What happened in the middle is the question. Although at the first special board meeting, if I'm not mistaken, it was stated that by ODOT that they had $800,000 that they could throw into the pot. Because we've been reporting to them for the whole biennium that we had this project in STIF, we still had the money for it. That was the money that ODOT was going to release to us to get us through this period. And when we went to look for that money, it had already been spent. So we were reporting to ODOT that we still had that project and had made no expenditures against it. But there was nothing in the bank to back that up.
So it got commingled.
That may well turn out to be true.
So then that means that whatever deliverables were on those grants, like specifically funded, we are defaulting on what those were. Like, is that something that we would have to look for money to return those like grants? I'm not sure how it works.
I don't believe that's going to happen. I'll tell you that in the normal world, that might be the case. I think that we're in such an unusual situation here, one which according to the state has never happened in Oregon before. There have been some failures, of course, but there's never been a time that we did service today and we said no service in 2 days. That's the thing that's remarkable about this. ODOT has stepped up. I had the opportunity to testify in front of the Oregon Transportation Commission and let them know what was happening here and what we were doing. many other transit properties have offered help, have offered their finance people's expertise, their operations people expertise. They're offered to send us their mechanics if we needed one. It's really been very, very supportive. Most of our riders are supportive. They understand they're certainly in a bad spot if they rely on us, but they understand that this is an unusual situation and they're working to correct it. So I don't think that there's going to be an effort at this point for us to come up with money to reimburse anything. We spent money we had. We may not have spent it where we thought we were spending it, but I don't think that we spent money we didn't have. So it's not like there's a hole we have to fill. Kelly has done most of that with the first loan. There were some past due account payables, and those are done. So, you know, time will tell. I don't think there's going to be much movement of money, except perhaps for that loan, until the audit is done. And then it'll be what it is at that point.
Then, so we would be having, or the way the budget is gonna be presented today is with how many drivers? 4 drivers, 5 drivers?
I think I want to say 6, I want to say 6 drivers.
And those 6 drivers will be under the union agreement that we recently, that's
Yes.
good. That's good. And then to one unsavory topic, we won't be discussing that at this meeting, but it's about the severance package that we're still considering legally if we owe it to Mr. Hazen. If we have to pay that, where would that money come from? Also from the loan?
You know, I don't know for sure on that. It depends upon, I would think, upon how a settlement was arrived at. We do have some protection being members of SDAO when it comes to financial liabilities. But I don't know, ultimately it could fall on us if it happens. I don't know where we are on that. I know the attorneys are working on that. I don't know if the board has any
There's
information
more
to share.
information tomorrow.
Okay.
Tracy?
Just to touch base for a moment on Pamela's suggestion, and so I would third it. I think that having the whole committee involved in this and the more eyes, the better. So I would heartily endorse that, and maybe that we could be, Madam Chairman, could we have that as a topic of discussion at tomorrow's meeting? Okay. Then I just want to comment that we are citizens, people who have taken from one 1953 bus going up and down with a stovepipe sticking out of it to one of the small community premier transit systems. And my question, and Paul, so when you weren't hanging out at Home Depot and things, in your past life, where were you? I wanted to just get a qualification of where you spent your time.
My employment history?
Correct.
I worked with the Metropolitan Transportation Authority in Los Angeles for 25 years. I was their inventory planning control manager for all bus and rail parts and supplies. I retired from that position in 2009. In about 2011, I joined the board for this body for 5 years. I left after that term, and I returned as operations officer for 5 years, and I retired again. And then this opportunity presented itself, and here we are.
Here we are.
You just can't get retirement done properly, can you?
I'm gonna do my best this time, I'll tell you.
Okay.
I see a hand up for Arla.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make a clarification regarding what Paul had said, that we were going to give Sunset Empire $800,000. That money had already been paid to Sunset Empire and was not spent. So it wasn't like we're offering an additional 800,000 at that time. It was already part of the STIF plan and it had already been paid to Sunset Empire. So it was just a clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. Pamela.
The thought that goes through my mind is this: I don't want to get up here and hear that the system is closed. So we talk about all, and I understand the audit, but it seems we also need to plan on what happens, whatever it says. And I don't think it's going to say good job. So I'd like there to be some thought what we're going to do. And one of them, while I'm still alive, is not going to be to close the transit. So what can we do if this audit and ODOT says, we're just not going to help you out? So I would like a plan being devised how we handle that.
I don't think that the purpose of the audit is to decide whether we stay in business or not. I really don't. As I mentioned before, other properties with whom we partnership in the Northwest Alliance, ODOT, the OTC are all rooting for us. They recognize how important that the service that we provide is to the residents of Clatsop County. It has to be there. I think the purpose of the audit is to identify where internal controls were missing and to make sure that internal controls are implemented to prevent that from happening again. And I wish I had brought that correspondence with me, but there is already change throughout the state. I believe it was on STIF reporting. Changes in the way the reports are to be submitted from the individual properties that reflect the potential of what we've gone through here, that indicate an immediate strengthening of processes to reduce the possibility of this happening in other locations. And this is after only 3 weeks. I would imagine as we go into the new fiscal year, there will be more controls put on all properties in the state, assuring that funds are handled appropriately. I can give you just a quick example. One of the things that the state asked us to do was to create a separate account for the loan. And the implications of that are pretty obvious. Money is going to go in one place and be spent out of the loan from that place. That wasn't a requirement before. And I don't know that it's a requirement yet. It's a recommendation. But there's a simple thing that may have allowed us to have greater visibility to what was going on. So it's those kind of internal controls and processes that we're looking to get some input from the audit as to what we can do here to strengthen what we're doing. I don't think that this was a district-wide event, although the whole district was impacted. I think this is something that may have been the result of perhaps less day-to-day participation by the leadership team in daily decisions, in decisions having to do with expenses, budgets. I was on staff for 5 years. I know how much involvement I had in those things. I know how often we got together as a team. And there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think the audit will show us specifically where those opportunities lie.
And the reason I bring it up is because we hear several times you have to prove that we should give you the money. And so that has been a concern. I mean, I understand and certainly want, safeguards that this doesn't happen again. And that's my concern is that, I just said
May I just respond to that, Madam Chair? If I said the state wants us to prove, I think maybe that was a necessarily crude way to characterize what's going on. As we're supposed to be responsible with the funds that we get, the state needs to be responsible with the funds that they pass through to us. I think what the state is looking for here is assurances that the district is going to be responsible going forward before they give us more money without those assurances. I don't think it's a matter of proof. I think it's a matter of reprioritizing controls and accountability, which is only the prudent thing to do in the circumstance.
I agree with that. The problem is that it's a transportation system, it's not a retail store. So that every day someone can't get to where they need to go. And that's so the resolution of this is really needs to be quick. And I don't think, in my opinion, it doesn't seem to be quick. And a lot of people are left stranded or having to find some other option to get to where they're going.
Tracy.
I just wanted to follow up. Paul, I was a witness to Paul's testimony. The state, in their questioning, they also were questioning themselves as to their priorities and their systems of management. Particularly, I believe they were talking about the connector, the Northwest Connector, and that they need to revisit the priorities and the ways that they deal with the connector service, and as which we were a part of. So I just wanted to, there was a lot of support in that room. So.
Thank you, there was.
Very much.
John.
You've been dealing with the state agency. I'm curious about our elected officials, state and our House of Representatives, our state senator. What's been your dialogue with them in order to bring them up to speed to be our advocate?
Did you want to speak to that?
Sure. So I've had several conversations with Senator Weber. The Saturday that we closed down, I sent emails to Senator Weber, Representative Dubarty, and Congresswoman Bonanucci. By Sunday, Weber had gotten back to me and she was going to start working with ODOT and the governor. And by Monday or Tuesday, they were starting to work on this loan. I've had several conversations with Senator Weber's staff and at least one conversation with the governor. They're all supporting us, but they want to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing. So I think we're getting a lot of support from them.
Okay, I think we will go on to discussion of the funds.
Okay.
That's on
I made.
This one's that set up this one.
This is what I
Was
mean
this
about,
different than?
this is what I mean about things being fluid. There have been some changes, they're highlighted on here. And I'll let, well, I don't know, Kelly, maybe we'll go line by line and when we get to the highlighted lines, perhaps if there's questions, we can.
Before you do that, can I ask a question? You have year-to-date actuals as a column. What month is that current to? The end of April?
March.
Okay, so that leaves one whole quarter unaccounted for.
Yes.
So, On the packet that was just passed out, the first page is resources for our general fund. When things happened here and the former director left, there was nothing passed on. There was no previous work done. There was no nothing leading up to this. So I'll be very honest that Kelly and I sat down and with what information we had, did the very best we could do to estimate what we would expect the resources to be. Now, these resources will be available if all goes as we hope that it will. If the audit shows that there was something here to cause concern, it may delay us getting these resources, but this is what we would anticipate, right?
Yes.
And that first number, since we don't have actuals through the end of the fiscal year, that first number is a guesstimate. I would feel pretty good if we had that $300,000 cash available going forward. As with any of these lines, it could be a little or a lot more, a little or a lot less. The next line that has a value here is previous levered or
I
levy.
just have one question
Yes.
with that.
Oh, sorry, Carol.
We've actually received the 500,000, right?
Yes.
So obviously so then I thought there was to be a separate accounting of that 500,000 and that the board hopefully would get that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think the question might be, what line is that 500,000 in?
Well, that's one, but and two, there are conditions that you have to follow, outlined. Excuse me, outline, you have to do the conditions,
Of the loan.
yeah, there has to be outline of the amount, the expenses, that sort of thing. That's a month, or whatever, time period report, so I don't see anything of that here.
So you won't see the $500,000 on this budget because this is for our budget for fiscal year 24. The $500,000 was received in fiscal year 23.
And will have been spent completely by 24.
Yes, that $500,000 will be gone. So our hopes is to get another $500,000, in which we would have to do another supplemental budget for and make adjustments for that. The loan payments, though,
They're in here.
are in here.
Right. But don't we get a report on that, even though it's not for, even though it's for the previous budget?
You'll get a report in the financials at the July board meeting for June's business.
Right.
Yeah.
So that 500,000, to be clear, is not gonna show up in the
Right, okay.
budget we're looking at, because it's for the current year. Again, the other reason that a supplemental budget needs to have been passed for 23. Does that answer all your questions, Pam?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So you would have seen that 500,000 as a supplemental,
If a supplemental budget
Was
had
had
been
been
passed, we would have seen it,
so that,
yes.
that
But there-
should
it's
have
not
been
even
done
in
and
it.
it needs to be done as soon as
Yes,
possible,
it does.
especially
But
so the board
it's-
can see that.
And none of that money is gonna be in the cash on hand or brought forward, because it will have been spent before this budget, the 24 budget year starts.
Correct.
Yeah, you're right.
If I could just
Thank
tweak
you.
that statement a little bit,
Yeah,
I would expect there may be some of the second loan carried over.
oh, yes, yes. If second loan comes through, you will be carrying that forward. You're gonna do a
Some.
supplemental budget for the current year and you're gonna carry it forward, yes.
All right. previously levied tax estimate to be received, and that's the taxes that trickle in after the due dates. We get a little bit of taxes every month from those property owners that pay their taxes late. You know that the majority of our taxes come to us in October, November time. Interest, you know, is pretty arbitrary, but we're gonna put it in there because we will have some interest. We go to other sources, fares, which clearly are significantly lower than they've been in previous years because we're planning going forward with just the two routes and paratransit.
There is somebody on Zoom who has a question. It's Mindy.
Oh, Mindy,
And her
yes.
question is, as a citizen budget committee member, I am on Zoom and can't get the handout. Is it just highlighting or did figures change from Mindy?
Let's make it clear when you get to those line items that they have changed so that Mindy can see which ones have changed. It's just two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So fares are at 50,000. Rentals, which are our sign on the roof and parking spaces, are at 10,005, which is kind of consistent with what it's been. Commissions and proceeds. We made a cheat sheet, is that on there?
No, vending machines, our commissions from the car charger,
The EVs.
yeah,
Okay.
and I'll make a cheat sheet. So I can everything.
State timber revenue, if I'm not mistaken, 2024, we're pretty good on as far as the way that money has been allocated. Typically, I'll just state that in 2025, that may be far different based on some of the changes that are being made in timberland ownership and management.
And what time of the year do you get to state timber revenue? Quarterly, okay, thank you.
So we haven't got our last, we will get our last bit of it by the end of May.
Right, which actually year to date is going to put you over what what we actually adopted in the budget
Yes.
for the current year.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
I missed line number 7 of fares, why it's so low.
It's low because currently the service plan has only 2 routes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on line 12.
Line 12, state mass transit payroll distribution.
We will have funds for that.
If you want to know what that is.
So I hadn't put anything in that line because I wasn't 100% sure what it was as we were going through the budget. So I left it out. And doing a little bit more research, it's we as employees in a transit district, we pay a transit tax. And it's funds from that transit tax that then is distributed out to the districts. And so we will get funding on that. And in the past, we have budgeted for that to be 90,000. And I don't have any reason to think that that would be any different. We had received 91,397 as of March. And we don't have anything else coming this quarter for that. So I don't expect it to be any different going forward. So that will be added in.
So you're looking to add that in?
Yes.
Okay, at 90,000?
At 90,000.
And I think that's a good example of what we're trying to do here. If we don't know what the money is, and we don't know when or how it's coming, we're not gonna put it in the budget and count on it. Because if it doesn't show up, you know, we're back in a bad spot again.
Right.
But Kelly did some research, has got some documentation, and so now we know what it is, and we'll put it in there.
And I'll be glad to donate my $4.94.
Thanks, Tracy.
I'll write a check in the mail.
We like it.
Oh, Pamela,
I just, in terms of the calculation, because I had researched it, and so you have the number of people who live in Clatsop County, and is there a percentage of their wages, or is, there's a specific collection of it?
It's a payroll tax.
So there's a, okay,
I think it's 0.06. Yeah.
0.06, and that's quarterly as well or not?
Yes, it's a quarterly payment.
It's payroll and
It's,
it comes from the state.
is there, can you tell if employees have dropped? In other words, they say a large company lays off a lot of people. Are there figures that you can find if that happens?
I don't think that there's anything out there. I mean, it's all supposition. How many people are going to be working next year?
Or it's all supposition?
Yeah, you know that, so if you're gonna be averaging out. So that's why you see you look at this, 2 years ago, we got 101,000. The year after that, we got 116,000. Now, we got so far 91,000. But is there still a quarterly payment? I think there's still a quarterly payment to go
So
for
maybe
the fourth quarter.
there's already, yeah, we
Yeah,
have one more, so, but it's still not gonna be,
Okay,
so what that tells you, if you look at that trend, is that there are fewer employees.
right.
But how can you ever tell that into the future?
Okay. Thank you.
And I believe that's people that work within the county.
Correct.
Not just live here, but that
That
is
is
work.
correct.
Those are.
Okay, we're on line 13.
Line 13 is training scholarships. We didn't budget any money there for good reason. Other, it's just one of those things you have to have in case there's a other that we didn't anticipate. And I think, we've chosen a small amount there because we're gonna be very careful.
so I'll tell you, in our other, and where I came up with my number, we get from SDIS, every year we get a longevity credit from them, and that's about $7,300. And so I just rounded.
I personally do not like to see other or miscellaneous in a budget. And so it would be my preference that rather than other, if that's where you see the money's coming from, you label it where it's coming from. That's my preference.
Second,
May I just ask a question on that point? If we get funding that was unexpected and not budgeted, on what line do we put that?
Well, you're gonna run a supplemental budget if
If it's
you
less
have
than
to.
10%, we wouldn't be running the supplemental.
Well, that's true, that's true.
So, I'm only making the point that I think that's why we have that line. Your suggestions well taken. Just-
Maybe you could have a other and leave it blank and then list this one according to what it specifically is. Because you said where it's coming from, so it's a known,
Yes,
and you can still have another that's sitting there.
you could, and you could have an other that, if it's very small amounts, you actually say what's in
Label it.
there. Right. I just don't like other with no explanation.
I appreciate that. The next series of lines has to do with the 5,300 funding series. These are the funds that we get from ODOT for the different things that are listed here, including operations and bus facility purchases. Within there also is a marketing, mobility management, preventative maintenance. CARES formula is going to drop off, I guess, because of previous dollars there. In inner city. So these are kind of the funds that are in abeyance right now, waiting for this audit. So these are what we would expect. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's what we would expect.
This is what we would expect. And I still expect that. I don't think that they're going to, I don't think that ODOT is going to withhold our funding forever. I think we just need to know what happens. This will flow.
So you're talking about line 15, 16, 17? Are you talking about line 18?
Yes, I'm talking about I could go line by line, I suppose. We had a marketing plan which we're not budgeting for. Although we have budgeted in years past and we have needed one, and we may, on the second iteration of this, put an amount in there for outreach and other activities that we need to do.
So I'm gonna ask on the, we had 60,000 in the current budget. There isn't a zero as to year-to-date actuals. Have we spent anything on a marketing plan?
No, we
The
haven't,
current-
that's my mistake
Okay,
of not putting a zero in there.
all right.
Because we were told,
I can say that we're not,
I'm so-
I like the chair's not looking to see.
I'm sorry.
Ask questions.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Is that the appropriate way to do that?
Yes, it is, Charles.
Try to just jump in.
No, you're right.
Well, I think we ordered some buses that were on back order. Did we pay for those, or is there a penalty for canceling that order, or is that just me old and think I remember something from a previous life?
No, I would appreciate the opportunity to respond to that. We had either 8 or 10 buses that we had applied for grants, and grants were awarded. And this started again perhaps in 2020.
Before my time.
Those grants, and they were 5339 grants, those grants come with the responsibility to pay a matching amount. We get 80% on the grant, we have to go up with 20%. And the buses that we had on order at one point, our 20% was over $1 million. Clearly, we didn't have $1 million. We had ordered 6 buses that fell into that group of buses that were impacted by the worldwide chip shortage. Those buses never did ship. That order, if I'm not mistaken, was canceled at some point. The funds were extended a couple of periods and then they expired. We ordered 2 buses to do the Portland route, and they came in and they were ready for us to pick up. But again, we didn't have the 20%. And as it turns out, we're not running Portland for a while again. We're focusing on our folks in Clatsop County. So those buses, we released those buses to go to somebody else who could afford them, who needed them. I would say that we were not directly penalized for not executing those agreements. The point here is, I try and make this subtly, is that often, as is the case with marketing, there were funds put in the budget for those purposes that we never used for those purposes. And yet they were not there at the end of the year.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, Paul.
Just a question. I'm looking at the budget we adopted last year. I'm looking at the year-to-date actuals.
On what line?
Starting from, it just states from 15 down to 24, the ODOT money, basically.
Okay, great.
I understand that the year-to-date actuals is the monies that we received in, right?
Yes.
Several of these lines have significant differences. Why?
Let me answer that.
Sure.
Our grant agreements with ODOT and those lines are reimbursable grants, so we have to spend that money to get that money. So that's the funds that we've been reimbursed. Also keep in mind, there's $158,000 from the grant, the 5311 operations grant, that we have spent that money and applied for the reimbursement and they haven't sent it to us yet. Plus, there's also the third quarter reimbursements that we have not received yet. So all of those funds would have showed as funds received.
That's the 200,000 you were talking about earlier.
Yes. That's part of it.
Well, I just look at one category, the operations budget on line 18.
Mhm.
I mean, that's like a $300,000 difference.
Yes.
We didn't need that $300,000?
No, we do need that $300,000 and $158,000 of it, so we spend our money and then at the end of the quarter, we send in the reimbursement to ODOT for those grants. So when I sent in the reimbursement to ODOT, after the second quarter, after December, we didn't get those, they didn't send us those funds. And then we crashed. And so now they're holding those funds, and they're holding all of our other reimbursements. So funds that we would have normally received for reimbursement monies that we've spent, they're not allowing us to get at this time until we finish, until we do the audit
And produce a budget.
and produce.
Well, I mean, there's this $200,000 number, and I'm looking at one line that says 300,000.
Right.
And so if you say they owe us 200,000, where's the rest of the money?
So the adopted budget goes out out for the full fiscal year.
Right.
And so we would continue to get those funds through reimbursements.
So they're holding up more than the 200,000 is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So if I could clarify a little bit, it probably would be useful for us to see what have you billed ODOT for that is reimbursable, that is still sitting in ODOT's hands rather than with us. Because
And I can
that
produce that for you,
ultimately,
just not it.
yeah, but that would be helpful.
Well, because the numbers just, like they said ODOT's holding 200,000. Look at one category, which is 300,000 short.
Right.
It's just odd to me, are they holding more than 200,000 is what I'm asking.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Can we find out what that number is?
I can get that number for you. I don't have it right at this moment, but I can definitely get it for you.
Because that's definitely gonna impact the payment of the loan or any operations going forward.
Okay, Mindy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question about line 21 for the intercity Lower Columbia connector. I see now Arla has posted a message of those funds. Is that why they're not on our line item here? We've had those funds in the past, so why are there no figures on this spreadsheet?
So did Arla post something on a chat?
Online, I just.
I can't see what Arla posted.
I can read to you what Arla posted.
Thank you.
Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. From Arla Miller, 23-25 allocations from ODOT is as follows. 5310 is $323,187. 5311 is $1,550,045. 5311 F IC LCC Lower Columbia Connector is $562,277. STIF STIF formula is $2,102,861. Arla, if that's correct? Good.
And
Thank you. It still doesn't explain why we don't have prior figures on the spreadsheet.
And that would be my mistake in not putting those in there.
so it appears that we're gonna need to get corrected spreadsheets for after we finish this day, that we can consider the really correct figures. If I could get some clarification, what did Arla say about those monies? Those are still owed to the district?
Why don't we just let them
Maybe
She simply
Arla
said
can
there
tell
are
us.
23-25 allocations
Okay.
from ODOT.
Let's hear it from Arla.
Okay.
Thank you, Arla.
Yes, thank you. So the 23-25 allocations are for the next biennium. They'll start July 1. So the monies we are holding until after the audits because funds were commingled. We're not sure how some of these reimbursements were paid. So like 5311, which is federal funds, if they were paid with STIF formula funds, that's state money, basically it's like it's already been reimbursed. So we need to, have audits go in and try to figure out as best as possible how those funds were paid, if they can figure it out, because with the commingled funds, it might be almost impossible to figure it out. We're holding the funds until after the audit, and right now we're holding about 259,000 and change.
And
I don't
that's-
have an exact figure.
So that's what has been submitted. There's still third quarter reimbursements to be submitted that haven't been submitted yet.
Right, but what I'm understanding from Arla is this is what it would be in the 23-24 budget year, are the figures you just gave us that are being withheld.
Basically, that's what, those are 2 years funds there. So basically half of those funds would be for each fiscal year.
23, 24,
Okay.
24, 25.
Is that making sense?
It
Yes,
does.
go ahead, Kelly.
So let me ask you this, Arla.
Yeah.
So the funds that are allocated to us. Now, are those funds that we can count on receiving starting the next fiscal year? So I didn't put them in our budget because I wasn't sure if ODOT was gonna be releasing those funds as the time came, or if they were gonna wait to release those funds after the audit. And so that's why those funds are not all put in there.
I understand. So I would budget for those funds coming in.
Would not.
Pardon me?
You would or would not?
I would.
Okay.
And then you're already gonna have to do a supplemental budget or a revised budget. If something should change, which I don't see happening, you will be receiving these funds as allocated. If something should change, you could always go back and revise it. But these are what funds are allocated for Sunset Empire Transportation District.
Deanna, where are they?
Thank you. And then, just to confirm, anything that came from the CARES Act is done. What we received, that's it, correct? Because of the pandemic, funds are over.
I'm sorry, Deanna.
Anything related to CARES Act is done for. We are not receiving anything else from that, or are we still waiting for any type of reimbursement that is like linked to pandemic emergency funds?
Arla, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe in 5311, there's still some funding that had to do with CARES. I know it's funds that don't require a match, and I could be wrong. I thought those had to do with CARES, but maybe not.
So we do have a discretionary out right now, which you guys would not fare well in for the remainder of the CARES funds. And FTA is getting ready to start clawing back those funds if we don't allocate them. Because President Joe Biden has said the pandemic is over and those funds need to go back to the Department of Treasury. So CARES funds, or now we're calling them recovery funds, are over.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that makes line 20 correct at 0.
Prior formula dollar amounts are also not on the spreadsheet.
And I will update that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a comment from the public.
Yes.
Okay. Quoting Mary W. Astoria, VR. This is holding writers hostage. When is this audit going to happen? Mary W. Astoria.
Thank you, Mary.
I don't have an answer to that question. It's a forensic audit. I know that ODOT is currently looking for a CPA that can do a forensic audit on public funds, which isn't something that's super easy to find. And the audit world right now is very minimal. Over COVID, they lost a lot of their auditors and a lot of their firms. So finding someone to do that has been difficult, unless Arla has an update that I don't know of.
Thank you, Kelly. So we have found an auditor. We are working on the scope of work with them right now and coming to an agreement on a contract. How soon that happens, we're hoping to, hopefully we can start. It looks like now probably by, the early part of June to do this audit. Don't know how long it's going to take or how many phases it's going to be in. So, but we have found an auditor now.
Yay.
Thank you.
And I have a question. Ultimately, who pays for that auditor?
We are paying for the auditor.
Thank you. Okay, so what line do you want to go back to?
So I will update the spreadsheet with all
Yes.
of her, and the numbers that she gave us is for 2 fiscal years, it's for the biennium, so it will be half of those.
Correct.
Well, we can go back to line 22 unless there's questions before that.
I don't see any.
Line 22 is bus and bus facilities. We had talked about putting an amount in there because it takes so long to get vehicles, and most of the vehicles that we have now have over 400,000 miles, which is well beyond their intended life. And if we don't put money in now, we wait till next year, then we're adding a year to when we're gonna get the vehicles, which already take a year or two to receive when we don't receive them. So we thought that would be prudent, but I think we're gonna wait on that until we make sure that we can provide service through the next fiscal year. And if there are funds in excess of the service that we can provide, we'll put those in for buses.
Where is that money coming from? Because this is a resource, this is income. Where would that $612,000 be coming from?
Well, it would be on a grant.
On a
We would
grant
apply
from
for a
ODOT.
grant.
Okay,
And again, I remind you, we would have to have in our budget, the 20%
exactly.
to pay the difference. So that's a key factor. I'm just pointing out to the committee here that if we continue year to year not buying buses, which has actually been how we've ended up by default the last 3 years, one day we're not gonna have equipment to deliver service anyway. So
You're right.
at some point, we're gonna have to bite that bullet and start to plan. But for now, it's zero. If we come up with another solution to that, we'll plug it in for the next round on this.
I don't think she
Mindy does have another
does.
question.
Mindy
Mindy?
have a question?
I do. Specific funds from ODOT for marketing plan and transportation options are reimbursable, and why are they not being running if that's the case?
For marketing plan.
What line is that?
The marketing plan,
15 and 23. You said they were refundable expenses from ODOT. Then why are we not running those programs? You said marketing plan is no longer, and outreach is no longer planned.
The marketing plan was something specific, I believe, and we didn't use those funds. We didn't do that marketing plan. So we didn't have anything to reimburse for that. And we're not going to do that marketing plan going forward. So we're not looking to continue with those funds. And then the other line on 23, transportation options is not 100% reimbursable. And so there's
What percentage of it is reimbursable?
I don't know that number off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah, the marketing plan was a huge project that was going to include rebranding and
Yes,
some
I remember
other.
that.
And then, you know, in light of current events, it just is not a priority right now. Okay, line 20.
Are the I think it's 4 micro transits, is that included in the future?
Where did I see
Think-
that?
I think I have and we had to pay 100,000 to get the 4 micro transit, is that still being considered?
You know,
Until-
I don't believe it's, well, let's see when we get to the expenses.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if that shows up. I saw it someplace just recently.
Okay, make sure we hold that in our mind.
You know, those were paratransit expenditures. Okay, Laura, 24,
Correct.
okay, we're not budgeting anything for Rural Veterans Program. At this point, safety grant is usually something that comes out for districts that have a program to improve safety. And I would like to say that we would participate in that. But I feel that we have safety practices in place, and right now I don't think is a time to take on an additional project. So we're not going to encumber funds there or count on funds there. Transfer from STF fund. This is something that I'm not sure anybody has a great answer to, unless it's Arla who knows all of these things. But my point is that beginning this biennium, STF funds and STIF funds have been combined. We used to report those separately, use those separately. Arla, did you want to weigh in?
Thank you, Paul. So I actually am a little confused looking at this sheet. Because it's transferred from, and I'm trying to understand, and I guess I'm looking at the line below that, the line 27.
Have we done something structurally incorrect here?
I guess I'm just trying to figure out how this is, because it's saying transferred in from STIF formula fund. And so I guess I'm looking more at the proposed budget, not the past, because we basically know there's no STIF formula fund left. And you've been reimbursed, you've been given all the money. So you transferred in from STIF formula fund. Kelly, can you explain this line item to me a little bit more? I'm not a finance person, but I'm just confused.
Are you looking at from previous or from going forward?
Going forward.
Where I came up with 700,000?
Yeah, you changed it from 1.2 million to 700,000. That's one of the changes, Mindy.
So I did make that change because I wasn't sure that our entire STIF plan was approved, and the only thing that we could see that was approved was just part of it, like 1.4.
Okay. I understand that. Yeah.
So that I was trying to not add in something that I didn't think was going to happen.
Okay. Thank you. And I'm not seeing the revised plan. I'm seeing what's online.
Oh,
so
I'm sorry, Arla. I had, yeah.
So is if you're transferring it in, where are you transferring it from? If the STIF fund is already an income, and then you're transferring this in from that fund, it feels like double counting to me.
I think that's just a verbiage.
Because they're not accounted for anywhere else. There are no other lines for STF or STIF funds anywhere. So it's probably just a matter of wording.
No,
I
it's
think,
not.
because it's like there's this.
Feel comfortable with transfer?
I don't like, the verbiage makes me very uncomfortable. Transferred in.
It's weird.
Transfer in means you have it somewhere else and you're moving it in.
It is
But if you
somewhere.
don't have it there,
It's on the next to the last page, isn't that? So you have
Yeah.
under SDIF.
so let's, if that's on the expenses side,
The new one.
let's hold that as a question
Page number, so page
until we get to the expenses page.
number.
Charles?
Is this a line that has a dollar amount change that I don't have on my spreadsheet?
Yeah, it went from 1.2 to 700,000.
Thank you.
Oh, I see.
Charles.
I think what we probably do, but what we're finding out is we're questioning things that we should answer 2 pages in. I think we should perhaps get
Yes, make
through
this.
the budget
Right.
and then make notes on things you don't get. It may be answered if we get to the end. So I think we should do that because we'll be
Yes.
here till, whatever, 9 o'clock tonight. If we stop for everything, just make notes, things of interest to you, and then perhaps 3 pages in, you'll see the answer. Does that make sense?
And again, I'll just say that because there's a change in the way STF and SDIF funds are going to be handled going forward, clearly we need to do a little more research to improve our understanding so that we can give you a reasonable explanation.
I thought STF was gone, combined.
It is combined with SDIF.
And that needs to be reflected in the budget. Okay,
Okay.
let's keep going.
Transferring capital reserve fund is nothing. Total resources except for taxes levied. Did I hear a question?
There's also no previous information for line 29.
I would assume that's because we didn't do a transfer in this year. Right?
We hadn't done a transfer this year, but I think she means the previous two.
Okay. So we get the total resources except taxes on line 30 at $1,927,000. And estimated on line 31, estimated taxes to be received, which gives us total resources of $2.927 million.
Except it would be greater because of the line 12 that wasn't initially put in there, and Kelly said it would be 90,000.
And it'll actually be greater than that because we'll add in, I'll update it with all of the grants and the amounts that Arla has just given us.
Right.
So
So
it'll,
you need to recalculate.
yes. So that's our next.
Okay, any other questions on this page? We'll get some answers on further pages. All right, so we're going to
So
page
this is only part of, I only gave copies of the ones that I updated, so then we'll go to the
Okay, so we're still on,
page 38.
right, and this is your special fund resources.
It's in the board pack.
Yeah.
Back to the board pack.
Back to the board.
Oh, page 38.
Sorry.
We tried to make this as easy as for you.
We just wanted to share the recipe.
We got that?
So page 38 on the original board meeting
Back
packet.
to the board pack.
Thank you.
All right, this is special fund STF, resources and requirements. This is a form that's provided to us to submit budget. However, there's zeros on here because these funds are combined with STIF.
So the only reason this is on here is because it's zeroed out and you're required to put it on for a number of years after you're no longer using that.
Correct. So it falls off of the previous years.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Questions on that, anybody?
We'll have it for a couple more years.
Okay. So we'll go to page 39.
Yes.
Okay. The 39 is the resources and requirements for the STIF funding, which includes STF funding.
Yes. Which is actually an updated form.
Okay.
Oh, you updated that?
Yes.
Okay.
We
Mindy,
updated
that's
it.
an updated form that you don't have.
So you're gonna go back to
Handout,
page 3 of the handout.
page 3 of the handout.
Sorry, you guys. And actually, it's gonna change from what I have on here.
Yes, it is.
Because it's one of the funds that we have the full amount of now, so it will actually change.
So we still want to go through this, or we want to wait until it's up?
Let's wait until this is updated.
Okay.
So did line 4 change to 700,000?
I'm sorry, Mindy,
I don't have line 4, page 39.
it was one that was updated, but it's actually gonna change again because the amount, that Arla gave us, is 2.1 million, and I had 700,000 in there, so that's gonna change.
Okay,
So I'll update those.
thank you.
And I feel comfortable that we should just
Does everybody feel?
come
okay
back
with
to
that?
this later.
All right, so then we're going to page 39. which is, not,
Yeah, my internet keeps stopping out.
no, 40, excuse me, it's 40.
And this one,
Isn't that, that's not a,
that's not updated, so we don't have
40 in the packet.
discretionary.
Can
And
you
that's all.
explain again what discretionary is?
We just have formula funds. So
Arla, can you help out on that one?
I was gonna say, I'll try to explain it, but I'm sure Arla will explain it much better.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Discretion.
On STIF discretionary program.
Okay, so STIF discretionary program is part of the STIF, of course. So there's the regular STIF discretionary, intercity discretionary, and 5311F discretionary. They're all for like intercity and intercommunity type funding through ODOT. And it's competitive based. So you have to write an application very well. Sometimes you get the loan, sometimes you don't. So as far as like the discretionary for the Lower Columbia connector, less the expansion, we will let you guys have that agreement, but not expanding to PDX. That is going to be funded through 5311F. And that's one of the ones I made in the comment that 5311F IC, which means intercity, for the LCC, and that's 562,277, but it's bundled in with our STIF. I wish it was part of it. I mean, not part of it. So it makes it more confusing to explain. Hopefully I didn't make the waters muddier with trying to explain it.
Well, no, but I might be able to, Arla. Are we not going to resubmit our STIF plan, which will give a different reflection in the budget? Or are we gonna stay with the same dollar amount, just rearrange projects?
So with the STIF formula plan, which is an allocation based upon the payroll tax that employees pay, the Oregon Transportation Commission conditionally approved, like what Kelly was saying, that 1,400,000 and some thousand. But I am working with Paul and his team to revise all the applications, not the discretionary application. We're just going to reword that in the statement of work. But the 5310, 5311. So 5310 is for seniors and people with disabilities. 5311 is a rural fund. And then the STIF formula, making it more for the real world as you guys have it right now. Not all these pie in the sky type things, which would have been great if you guys were stable and secure. But we are revising that, and we will get approved by OTC, working with Paul, that the actual 2,102,000 for the STIF formula instead of the 1,400,000 and some.
So if all we're doing is looking at the resource dollars, you, on this page, you have that 0. Is there supposed to be some money there then?
We didn't plan to run Portland, that's
So we weren't gonna do Portland.
Okay.
Is that the only?
Airport.
Yeah, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, we weren't gonna do the expansion,
Okay.
and now we aren't gonna do Portland either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so my administrator does feel that's an important thing. If you guys can get the drivers back, because it affects Columbia County residents as well.
True.
With Columbia County having to pull back what they did because they don't get any general fund from Columbia County itself, they rely solely on ODOT agreements from Public Transportation Division. That additional run through with the Lower Columbia connector helps some of their agencies. But we do understand that if you're not able to have the resources to fully operate that run, we'll understand that. And I can talk to my administrator and let her know that you guys will not be interested in that discretionary funding, or?
Yeah, it
What's-
sounds like we may have to have a conversation, Arla. I
Thanks.
quite honestly need a bit of clarification on that.
Arla, can I ask a question too? So
Sure.
if we were not to finish with the Lower Columbia connector, could we, then we could hand that back and you guys could look alternative sources to different company?
Not really, because that is a discretionary and is based on what Sunset Empire proposed. That monies will go back into the coffer for next biennium or next time F5311F comes up for discretionary.
Paul, you had a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, there's a lot of numbers that look like are gonna change here.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, I don't know if I can vote on something.
We're not voting today.
Okay,
That's already a given.
that's a given?
There, I won't vote on something that doesn't have exactly what we're doing.
I thought we scheduled for 2 meetings.
That's why we have another meeting
That
scheduled.
was emailed, we got 2 meetings.
Yes.
This is Cameron.
Well, I thought we had 2 meetings that we needed 2 meetings.
No, we haven't.
The second one is if needed. We have determined it's
We're
if
needed.
Well, that takes care of the elephant in the room, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And I agree.
Thank you.
Yes. Deanna,
Thank you. So these forms that we're looking at, like right now, we're looking at Form LB 10.
yes.
Were these provided by the state for us to do this? Okay, so then I keep seeing under object classification, like I'm looking at page 3 of the revised, page 40 of the original. And then when it says requirements and it says object classification, it says transfer. And then previously we also saw that it said transferred in from STIF. So if these forms come from the state, why does it say transfer when they're actually like allocated grants?
The general form comes from the state, and then we fill it in to meet our needs.
Got it. So then, yeah, the transfer is really confusing. So if we can have more clarification for our next meeting on what exactly is it? Is it a transfer from another fund like we were discussing before? Or if we're waiting for it, or if it's an allocation, or if it's a reimbursement, like having a little more detail on what it is. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? So we were on page 40. All right, so let's go to page 41. We're now on the capital reserve fund.
This is also in the change package.
And it's just actuals that I changed from fiscal year 21.
So Mindy, capital reserve fund is also changed, and the only thing that was changed is the numbers on the second preceding year. So that's the historical data.
Can you
But
give me a line and a dollar amount?
Line 2 is 100455. Line 6 is 5102. Line 10 is 105557. And you got a problem on line 13 then, because
Thank
if it's total resources, oh, I see, that's a repeat of line 10. Okay, that makes sense.
I have a question.
Yes, thank you.
Why were these changed? Why weren't they put in correctly in the first place?
I put them in incorrectly to begin with.
Thank you.
Okay, so capital reserve fund, you are saying that, for next year, you're proposing nothing to be put in the capital reserve fund?
Well, we're saying we don't have anything in there now, we ran out of cash. And it looks like we have not budgeted for anything to go in there, although I remember seeing where we put something.
Not in capital reserve, in, so not in, we haven't budgeted for anything to go into capital reserve, but as we go forward, there's budget to have, contingency of 3 months, and so as we get to that page, I can explain that, but I don't have anything budgeted to go into capital reserve.
Any questions?
And that could change as we have new.
Yeah, maybe I could interject at this point. One of our guiding principles here, based on discussions with other properties and recommendations that we got from them, is that they each have an amount in reserve in case something like this happens. And one of the rules of thumb that we heard was to always have 3 months of operating funds in reserve, and that wouldn't be a capital reserve.
No.
So what big picture, we're trying to pay the bills, restore service, and put money in the bank all at the same, and pay off the loan and put money in the bank. Because I would hope at the end of the first year or the second year, as other properties do, that we would have $1 million in the bank. $1 million doesn't go very far these days, and in uncertain economic times, maybe even less far. But that's one of the things that we're looking at, and I think if we have an opportunity to put money in capital reserve or begin to build a reserve that we can use for other than capital should we need to, I think that's better at this point. If we tie up money in capital reserve and another requirement comes along, we're faced with a special board meeting with a supplemental budget, with discussion about whether we should move it or not. So I think we're trying to be prudent and maintain some flexibility while we're going forward to dig out. Did you have something, Jason?
Madam Chair, if I may?
Yes.
A quote from Mindy, can Mary email me the corrected handout, please?
Well, that would be great.
Oh, I don't know, you sent it, did you
Did I
send it?
send it to you?
We'll work on that, Mindy. Okay, they're gonna work on it. Send it to you, Mindy.
Anything else on that page that we can talk about?
That was
I have a-
page 4.
I have a question.
Yes, Mindy.
So if the capital reserve and operating contingency are different things, what happened to the money that should have been in capital reserve?
It wasn't in capital reserve. It was spent.
Yeah, we didn't have any cash left. We had no capital reserve left. We were out of funds.
Okay.
Yeah, I suspect if we'd have had some, we'd have done a supplemental and put it into operations and kept going. Okay,
So we are now, that's all our resources. We are now into requirements. So that's government speak for expenses.
And that is also an updated page.
And that's an updated page. Okay, this is gonna, I'm gonna propose a little bit of a change, if you are agreeable. We know that this is gonna probably generate a lot of discussion. It's 11:45. We were originally gonna take a break at 12 to 12:45. You wanna move it up by 15 minutes?
Sure.
So that we start fresh on the requirements page?
Yeah.
Is that agreeable to everybody?
Agreeable.
Okay, so this meeting is in recess
Until
12:30. That's the 45 minutes. Okay?
Thank
Good deal.
you.
we're